Today in the wonderful world of cut paper, we're talking about the unsung hero of collage, lines. Because we aren't drawing them, you might overlook the importance of lines in collage art. But, like with any art form, lines are the backbone of creativity, helping us define shapes, add texture, and guide the eye through your masterpiece. Whether you're aiming for straight, curvy, zigzag, or even spiral lines, mastering the art of cutting the perfect line is key to elevating your collage game. So let's explore some of the lines we can make out of paper, and I'll share some of my tips and tricks to get you confidently cutting. Achieving a perfectly straight line with scissors is no easy task, especially if you want the line you're creating to be longer than the length of the blade of your scissors. Have no fear, we have tools that can help us do that. Of course, we can take a ruler, a pretty perfect straight line. But because we are still opening and closing our scissors, we have the chance to make the line a little bit jagged. Even better is to use said ruler and a rotary cutter. This has a round blade that when you push makes a continuous line. And using this self-healing cutting mat, create a perfectly straight line. If you want the truly perfect straight line, the paper cutter, which will cut multiple perfect lines all at once. The tighter the curve you're doing, the smaller the scissor blade and the thinner the width of the scissor blade. If you want to get into really, really tight curves. Or if your curves are going to have really, really thin lines, it might be easier with small scissors. When you're cutting a curve, you want to keep your arm relatively still. It's the paper that does the work here. You're pushing the paper into the scissor blade rather than moving the scissors around to get around the curve. So I have them open and I leave my hand still and slowly am closing the scissors. And notice how my hand here is manipulating the paper to get these curves. This is where I have the most control. The closer to my hand is where the most control of my scissors are. But I barely move the scissors at all to make myself a perfectly curved little organic shape here with my curved line edge. Another tip I have for you is often it's easier to start with a bigger shape and slowly peel away at the line along the edge. So you have the size you want and the look of the line that you want. If you're like me, you're going to be using the curved line a lot in your artwork, and it is worth really practicing it and doing different lines of curve, work with different size scissors. The wavy line is very similar to the curved line. Same technique. The larger the scissors, the longer, smooth, wavy line you can make. Again, you hold the scissors stationary, and a wavy line, you're working back and forth. And for the wavy line, I am going closer to the tip of that scissors because I'm pushing it in and using almost the whole scissors to get my wavy line. In order to get a perfect width all along your wavy line, it's almost impossible unless you draw it first. This is where it gets tricky because you need enough paper to hold on to with your non-cutting hand. Anytime the paper is overlapping the bottom blade, you can see what you're doing. If you're cutting like this, and you need to follow a line, it's at the back and it's hard to see what you're doing. So you don't have to hold it right near the blade, that's dangerous. Move your hand around to the front and go like that so you can see what you're doing. These scissors are too big. I can feel that already. They can't get tight enough. There we go. This is the line where I drew, and this is the one that I freehanded. And you can see the width of it is quite even all along, whereas this one is sort of fat and thin. Using a pencil or pen is allowed. That's okay, because look how cute that is. That's a really cute wavy line. Oh, it's so sneaky. A dotted line is made up of circles. By closely almost connecting these circles, you can make all kinds of lines. So depending on how I glue them down, I could have a wavy line, a curved line, a straight line, but they're separated. Each dot is separated. There are 3 ways I know of to create a dotted line. So I can cut out circles by hand, one at a time, or put several pieces of it one on top of the other. And I can make multiple of the same circle. I got this little template. I can draw the circle first that I want and then cut it out like that. If you want to do very tiny dotted lines, I would use a hole punch. There's no way I can cut out that small and that perfect a circle. Look how small this one is. They also have hole punches that come in bigger sizes that will make you perfect in multiple circles to create dotted lines. You can make a dashed line out of any type of line. So if I'm using a curved line, a wavy line, a straight line, doesn't matter. You're just cutting it up into pieces and gluing it down slightly separated from each other. Especially if your line is thick, it might have a heavy feeling. So just by chopping it up and separating it a little bit, it lets some of that background come through to the foreground and gives it a little bit of depth, which is kind of cool. So I can take my wavy line that I made before, and just by cutting it up, it's like a puzzle. But see, that gives kind of a cool effect. Looks like dinosaur bones. Any type of line can create a negative space line. I can do a straight line like this. When I put the papers together, create a line down the middle. And so that's my negative space. So here I have a thin negative space line. I can turn it into a very thick negative space line. I can do it with a curve, especially if you have a different color in the background. You can see it through, and it makes a line where there's an absence of line, which is so cool. I love that. I'll do a curve here, and then I can glue it on top like this and just have a little top of the curve showing. The zigzag is one of the more difficult lines to cut out of paper. If you want your zigzag to be perfect, you might have to use a pen or pencil. So what you'll notice, if I try to make a zigzag, and I'm doing it just by eye, just back and forth, opening, moving the scissors, chomping down, opening, moving the paper, I should say. Move the paper, chomp down, open, move the paper, chomp down. All right, so there I have a zigzag line. They all come to different spots. And again, like with a wavy line, To make it the same width is very difficult if I don't have a guideline. Some of them are touching the ruler, some of them are higher up, same with the other side. It's very tricky to make it perfect. And you can see the width is different here. I have here it's narrow and then it's wide there. If you do want the perfect zigzag, you're going to need some guidelines. Draw 2 lines, one for the top of the teeth and one for the bottom of the teeth. I'm also going to have to measure where I want the top of the triangle to touch. So let's do it at 1 inch intervals. 1 inch there. Stop at that line. Turn my scissors. Straight across, stop at that line. Turn my scissors. Oops. Oh look, I'm making a new kind of line. I'm making like a diamond line. Let's try it like this, using the tip of our scissors. And let's have a look. Wow, so that's pretty perfect. Using 2 lines and measuring to cut in between is the only way that I could think of to get a really almost perfect zigzag. You can see it looks totally different than the one I just did by eye, much more uniform. So sometimes you really do need to use other tools than your scissors. The spiral. To start a spiral, you need to start with a circle. You might use the top of a jar. If you like, you can draw your spiral. You can take a pencil in case you make a mistake. I don't do that. I never make a perfect spiral. I'm not going to start today. And I always just do it by eye. I've cut a spiral, but if I push it down and glue that to the paper, I'm back to just having a circle. So when you cut a spiral out of a circle, you will always end up with 2 spirals. I go where I started my spiral here. I come in a little bit. I'm going to just follow the curve and create my second spiral. Spiral within a spiral. And because I'm not measuring it and I didn't draw it first, one spiral is going to be much thicker than the other spiral. So there I have 2 spirals. So if I just need 1 spiral, I will save the second one in my scrap paper folder for another art project, or I'll put both of them in my art project. Last but not least is the torn edge or the rough edge line. Many collage artists only use torn edged paper. You can rip out very precise shapes by just pinching the paper very closely between your fingers and working along like that, and make curves, make waves, cut out spirals with your fingers. The little tip I'm going to explain to you how to get either a white edge or just the color on the edge without the white, in case I want one or the other. So how I think of it is some paper like this one has color on both sides. Other paper only has color on one side, on the front, and then it's white on the back. It doesn't matter, it's the same with both of them. This is how I think about it, is that the paper is compressed into layers. In this case, where it's white on the back and colored on the front, I imagine it as 2 layers pressed together. And when I rip it, I am ripping apart the color layer from the white layer in the back. The same is true when it's color on both sides, except for I think of it as having 3 layers with my white layer in the middle of 2 color layers. But For the technique, it doesn't matter. It will give you the same result, whether it's color on the back or white on the back. Let's say I want to make a shape like this. I want to tear out a curved shape like that. And I want it to have only color on the top. I don't want any white showing. I'm going to take my right hand, pull it towards myself, and then I have that curve with none of the white showing, but the white is showing on the bottom. Where I pulled it away, you can see that edge. So what if I want to make the same curve, but I want it to have a white edge all along it? Here's the curve we want. And I would use my left hand to peel the color off the background. So I'm peeling the color off the background with my left hand towards me, peeling that top layer off the background. You see, and then I'm left with the white. You're either using your right hand or your left hand. So I'm pulling that way, pulling my right hand towards myself, no color background. My left hand, whichever you're pulling towards yourself, you're pulling the color off. It's gonna have only the color on it, whatever you're pulling towards yourself. I don't know, I hope that wasn't, I hope that wasn't too confusing. Experiment with it. So there you have it, some of the kinds of lines that you can make out of paper, and there are tons more you can come up with, I'm sure. So just keep practicing with your scissors and your paper. Keep practicing these beautiful lines. And if you're interested in knowing how I go about gluing these onto my surface, I have a video all about glue where I test different kinds of glue, and I had a lot of fun doing that. So check that out, I have it linked here, and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye.